I found myself in a difficult situation. It was a serious, fateful situation that would have ended badly in any case. I got drunk on a business trip and fell into the clutches of a predator. He was handsome, witty, and knew what to say and when to say it. The next day, I woke up in his bed. I was terrified. But this cunning devil convinced me that it was just a fleeting infatuation, that neither he nor I wanted it, and that we would never speak of it again. I spent the next 3 nights with him. He was an experienced lover, far superior to my husband, mainly because we were each other's first. We experimented, read books, watched adult movies, but it always ended in ordinary, mundane sex, and that was enough, until it wasn't. Dylan was bigger, more demanding, more commanding than asking, and could go on forever. I returned home, scared and ashamed, knowing he would understand just by looking at me. But he didn't understand. He hugged me and told me how much he missed me. That night, we made love. 4 months passed, and my affair gradually faded into the past. When I returned to my old life, I had to attend another seminar. I almost backed out, but I knew that if I did, I would lose any hope of a promotion, so I gathered my courage and decided that if I saw Dylan, it would be purely platonic. I registered at 6. The conference turned into 3 nights and almost every morning of sexual games. Bobby was happy to have me home, but I was so bored that I almost fell asleep during sex after we got back together. 4 months later, it all happened again. I was seriously considering leaving Bobby when Dylan let slip that he was married. I got a promotion and didn't have to go to the next conference, although I warned the woman who was replacing me to beware of conference Casanovas, citing Dylan as an example. 6 months passed, and I felt like everything was fine. But then one of the women Robbie worked with started hitting on him. It upset him so much that he told me about it, and I was furious. How dare she, that bitch? It didn't come to a confrontation because she was fired. But it scared me. If he had slept with her, I would have ruined everything. Then I remembered that I had skeletons in my closet, too, and I mentally wiped the sweat from my forehead. It made me appreciate my marriage more, and I consciously tried to make him happy. I showed him some techniques I had learned from Dylan, saying I had read about them and thought they were interesting. They were interesting, though not as intense as what I had experienced before. He came home to find me in sexy lingerie with a candlelit dinner on the table. He asked if he had missed something important, but I dispelled his fears with a kiss. "What's going on?" Suddenly, I felt awkward. I need to talk to you about something important. I didn't mention it before because I was away on business, but with my promotion, it will only be once or twice a year. I want to... He smiled. Damn. He almost always knew what I was thinking, except for one notable occasion. Yes. Throw away your pills. The dinner I had worked so hard on had gotten cold, but it was delicious after reheating. We sat in our bathrobes, knowing it would be silly to get dressed. I knew I was glowing. He seemed happy, too, and we knew it was too early, but for a whole month we had sex like crazy. I had never felt so loved. 4 months passed, and I still wasn't pregnant. The doctor told us not to worry because sometimes medication takes longer than expected to leave the body, and that soon we'd be changing diapers at 3 in the morning and wondering what we'd ever thought we were doing. Then my manager called me. "Have you heard about Julie? She was hit by a guy who ran a red light. She has a broken arm and leg. I know you're glad you didn't have to go, but I need your help. You know what to do, and Julie needs to be better by next time." I couldn't say no, so I went home and told Rob about the trip. He was disappointed but understood, and I made sure he was okay before I left. After the last one, he leaned back in his chair and smiled. "That's it. Now you're definitely pregnant. Mark it on the calendar." We marked it with a big red X on the calendar in his workshop before he drove me to the airport. I arrived, settled in, and went to my daytime classes. Not surprisingly, Dylan was there. His smirk when he saw me annoyed me to no end. He tried to approach me several times, but I kept people between us. Finally, he came up to me at dinner. "Good to see you. Maybe we can hang out later." My response stunned him. "I don't think so, Dylan. You're a great lover, and I had an amazing time with you, but that's in the past. Let's just leave our romance as a fond memory. My husband and I are trying to have a baby, so I can't get involved with you. I can't take that risk." He seemed annoyed. "We'll be careful. We'll use condoms, and I know a pharmacist who can get you emergency contraception pills. How about that?" "That won't work. I might already be pregnant, so there's no way I'm taking those pills. Condoms break. And honestly, the thought of sleeping with you makes me sick. You're still in good shape, so you won't have any trouble finding someone else to sleep with." He looked shaken, and the word he kept repeating was sick. He must have thought about this for a long time because he made me sit with him during the evening's introductions. Then he handed me his phone, and I almost fainted. On the screen was a photo of me pleasuring him. "You took a picture? You bastard." Dylan grinned. "Lower your voice. I take pictures of all the women. Now let's get down to business. If you don't want this and other pictures of us to end up on the internet, come to my room tomorrow night. I would have done it with you tonight, but I already have someone from the Cleveland office." He left with his eyes downcast. "Tomorrow." I sat there in shock. Then the tears started. The landlady saw me crying and took me to a small room that wasn't being used. She asked if I was okay, and once I started, I couldn't stop and told her the whole sordid story. She frowned, then smiled. "Wait here. I need you to talk to someone. It will only take a minute, and it may solve your problem." A few minutes later, she returned with a man and a woman. They didn't stand around idly. The woman ordered me in a stern voice to tell them everything. I was ashamed to admit it, but I was too scared not to. After that, I noticed that the man showed a moment of disgust, while the woman remained unperturbed. She sighed and then introduced herself. "I'm Captain Dana Rogers of the SBI, State Bureau of Investigation, and this is Sergeant Matthews. What he is doing is a form of blackmail, more specifically known as sextortion. In this state, it is a Class F felony. A conviction could result in a large fine and imprisonment for 10 to 41 months. If we go down this route, your offenses will be disclosed." "That can't happen. I'll lose him for sure." Matthews spoke for the first time. "There is another way out. People who do this rarely think about the consequences. When faced with criminal prosecution, they usually give up. We can work with you." "Please." Captain Rogers sat down and thought for a moment. I felt like she was judging me, but I was willing to accept that if it would solve my problem. "All right. We'll set a trap. This will not be an official operation of our department. I will do it as a favor to my sister. However, if you find yourself in a similar situation, you will have to go to court. Otherwise, we will not be able to help you." They left, and I looked at the landlady. She smiled. "Honey, I was in the same situation recently. Dana helped me, but the guy sent the photos to my husband out of revenge and didn't ask for anything in return. We were separated for 9 months. I just moved back into our house and am trying to avoid situations that could jeopardize my marriage. I'm on a very short leash, but that's the price I'm willing to pay." The next day, Dylan sat down and smiled at me. I tried to avoid him as much as possible. He insisted that I go to dinner with him, enjoying his power. I deliberately tried to look as attractive as possible to turn him on, sitting with a slightly open neckline and a bare thigh. He smiled. "I'm glad you're trying. It'll be like old times." "No, it won't. This isn't consensual. You're forcing me to have sex with you." "Forcing is too strong a word. I prefer to say that this is an unwanted encounter, but it will be over soon." "Like I believe that. You mean you won't try to do the same thing if we're ever alone together?" His smile made me nervous. "Maybe, but you know you'll like it. I remember how wild you are. It won't take you long to get into character." and then I took the bait. Look me in the eyes and tell me you know you're doing the wrong thing. Tell me it's not blackmail. Dylan laughed. That's exactly what it is. It makes it even more enjoyable for me. He looked at me when I laughed, wondering what I was thinking. His eyes widened slightly when two agents approached us. Dylan Thomas Renner, you are under investigation on suspicion of attempted extortion and intent to commit rape. Come with us without resistance. If you come with us voluntarily, we will not handcuff you. If you run, you will be tasered and dragged out in handcuffs in front of your colleagues. You have no proof. My lawyer. He'll run for his life when he hears the recording. Dylan stared at me. Bitch? You had a microphone? That'll never hold up in court. Captain Dana laughed. Of course it will, idiot. Not only is it part of a criminal investigation, but this state has a sole consent rule, which means that if one of you knows, it's legal. Now I advise you to remain silent until we read you your rights. As for the trial, if you are found guilty, you will automatically face 1 to 3 years in prison, plus whatever fine the judge decides. He looked as if he was about to pass out when he was led into an empty room and left under the supervision of Sergeant Matthews for 20 minutes. Captain Rogers entered the room, leading me behind him. Listen carefully. Mrs. Marshall has agreed to drop the charges under certain conditions. Are you ready to hear them? He didn't have time to nod. Good. She will drop the charges if you delete all of her photos from your phone, home computer, cloud storage, and any other devices. You will delete them in our presence immediately. Is that clear? His expression said it all, but he agreed. Matthews opened his laptop, connected it, handed it to him, and stood behind him. They were almost done when Matthews grabbed his arm. Get back, Renner protested, but Matthews was adamant. There were several more photos of 3 other women, and he had to delete them all. 40 minutes later, everything was done. Rogers stood up. We will keep a recording of your conversation about the attempted blackmail of Mrs. Jones in our files, just in case something happens. As much as it pains me, you are free to go. Mr. Renner, I suggest you seriously reconsider your lifestyle and make some changes. One day you may encounter a vengeful husband or professional consequences. I see you have a wedding ring, and I know from experience that when something explodes and becomes public knowledge, the shrapnel can fly in all directions. The conference ends in 48 hours. And I advise you to behave as well as you can. I stood behind her and smiled while she explained everything, and he glared at me. I went home trying to forget about this painful event. My husband was surprised by how I lashed out at him that evening. It was my way of reaffirming my commitment to our marriage. Despite what I had done in the past, I truly loved him. He must have been right about the date of my conception, because 8.5 months later, I gave birth to a beautiful baby boy. 2 years later, a baby girl was born to complete our family. A few years later, I had to go to the conference again as vice president to receive an award. Given the history of that city, we decided to make it a family trip. The conference was on Thursday and Friday, and we reserved Monday and Tuesday for a mini vacation. Gail was 12. Her body was developing into a woman's form. Mick was almost 13 and already taller than both of his parents. My father was 6 feet 10 inches tall, and I took after him. He had been invited to join the junior basketball team, but he was clumsy and never liked sports. He was into computers and had built one from spare parts, an amazing machine that could do everything our factory machines couldn't. We had a mixer, and I enjoyed talking to people I hadn't seen in years. Then I turned around, and there he was. Dylan. The years hadn't been kind to him. He was bald and weighed 30 or 40 pounds more than he used to. I noticed that he wasn't wearing a wedding ring and thought that she had probably left him years ago. Dylan? Bitch. I prefer Amy. Should I call you a bastard? I see you're not wearing a ring. Did she catch you cheating? When he answered, I felt a momentary pang of pain. No, I caught her. I considered it karmic retribution for all the women he had slept with, but kept my expression neutral. I'm sorry to hear that. Because of us, I almost lost my husband. Will there be any problems? He blushed, but his voice was steady. Number, you mind your business and I'll mind mine. I nodded. Good luck, Dylan. I turned and walked away, smiling as I approached my husband. He had seen me talking to Dylan and was smiling. Who's that older man? I met him at my first conference. He's 3 years younger than us. When we first met, he had a full head of hair and was at least 30 pounds lighter. It looks like life hasn't been kind to him. Rob looked at him more critically, then smiled again. If life has been cruel to him, it has given you VIP treatment. You don't look a day older than when we first met. Maybe he's just had bad luck with women. I've been lucky. My eyes glistened with unshed tears, and I hugged him tightly. Now I hated my affair more than ever, and wondered how I could have risked the love of a good man for a fleeting infatuation. We're lucky. Speaking of luck, I hope the babysitter wore the kids out today. He smiled like an idiot, a very desirable, loving idiot, for the rest of the evening. I held his hand in the elevator, thanking God for his mercy and reaffirming my commitment to my family. 10 years later, I sat with my husband and watched my son marry the love of his life. She had a career that eventually included travel, and we had a long conversation ahead of us. Our company had a digital bulletin board where employees were congratulated on birthdays, weddings, and other important life events. It included all the branches, and I saw a message that Dylan had died at the age of 46. There were no details, so I dug around and found out that he had been hit by a car while crossing the street, running away from the husband of the woman he was sleeping with. The car was traveling at 80 kilometers per hour and crushed him like an insect on the windshield. I was sad that he had lived his life that way, but then I heard, "You may kiss the bride." He disappeared from my memory, and I hope he never returns.